Welcome to episode 197 of the Various and Sundry podcast. I'm your host, Matt Harmon, joined live from our virtual studio, not on the beautiful campus of Grace College and Theological Seminary, by my good friend, my colleague, my co-host, and the man who is eagerly awaiting a couch, John Scott Sloat.
Doc, what's going on?
Well, I'm fascinated to hear more about this couch that you're waiting on here since you're recording from home.
Yeah, so we're recording Tuesday morning instead of Monday. We'll talk why that happened in a bit, but I always work from home on Tuesday, believe it or not.
Okay.
And but I was going to come in to record and then realized that we are going to have a couch delivered. So we bought a new sectional couch for our living room. That's, you know, our living room's an interesting place. It's no TV, it's large, and so we need a big couch in there. And so we went out and bought a couch for the hopes of getting it in time for Christmas, which, you know, October 10th qualifies as in time for Christmas.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
So I am waiting for their delivery between which I did not know when I asked to do a virtual recording. They told me 3 to 6. They gave me that time frame that they will deliver the couch.
I see. Yeah, don't you have? I thought you had a sectional in there. You just have two, like a couch and a love seat in there.
So we had a sectional in there, but it was just too small for the room. It just looked really tiny, and so we wanted something bigger, something that filled up a little bit more space. So that's why. So we moved that down to the basement. We now have ample seating in the basement for sports, movies, things like that.
Okay. All right. Well, if you would like to get in touch with John and find out more about where he bought his couch, you can reach us on Twitter at VNSPod. You can email the show, variousandsundraypodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook and on YouTube. And of course, we would love for you to leave a 5-star rating of the program. All right, John, let's jump right into the sports here. There's a lot going on. This is a busy month. Yeah. So let's start NFL, since that's your jam.
Okay.
Tell us about the Jets this weekend.
The Jets had a gritty win. So they went into Denver for the third year in a row, believe it or not. I think that was our third year in a row going into Denver, or at least playing the Broncos. And we beat Russell Wilson and a late career Sean Payton. I think that's fair to say.
Maybe, yeah.
Is that fair? I mean, he seems to have put on some weight.
Yes.
And he seems to do not quite as good of a job as he did in New Orleans. That's at least my feeling watching him.
Yeah, though in fairness, I'm not sure he has the same level of talent to work with.
Sure. Yeah, Drew Brees is not there anymore. And I don't think
definitely late career Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I think Russell Wilson might be playing himself out of the Hall of Fame right now. I mean, just not looking good. Anyway, Zach Wilson was serviceable, made some good passes, put points on the board. The defense had a defensive touchdown. We had another safety, which is just weird. But yeah, it was a good win, something we can build on. You got to beat the teams you're supposed to beat, and that's what we did.
And so at this point, how optimistic are you that the Jets can make the playoffs?
You know, a lot of people had us starting 1-3 anyway, even with Aaron Rodgers. So I think I feel okay. I'm hearing that his rehab is going well and he's hoping to make a January return to the team. So we'll see. We'll see.
But the Jets are 2-3, correct?
2-3 now, right?
Yeah.
But before this week they were 1-3.
Okay.
They got an outside shot. I think they're in the hunt, as the graphics around Thanksgiving will say.
Okay. All right. Anything else in the NFL landscape that caught your attention?
So I was at a wedding all day, so I did not catch very much football, NFL football. I saw that the Bears won on Thursday.
Yes. And Justin Fields played really well.
Did the Texans win as well?
That I don't think they did, though. Again, CJ Stroud is playing well.
Yeah, that's what I was alluding to. I think CJ Stroud is playing pretty well. The Jaguars beat Buffalo in London.
Yeah.
Which who saw that coming?
Yeah, though I don't know. I think when you add the element of flying across the ocean and playing a game that's at a very different times, it's like I just think that's weird.
Yep.
And that's not to give the Bills an excuse, but it does open the door for more fluky things happening, I think, than if this game were just in Jacksonville or in Buffalo.
Yeah. I think the 49ers are very good.
Yeah.
I think the Eagles are very, very good. The Lions are very, very good. And I believe
they
that's
are.
Three NFC teams right there. So that's going to be interesting to watch those three make their way into the playoffs. The Carolina Panthers are very, very bad.
Yes.
Very, very bad. The Arizona Cardinals are very, very bad. And quite frankly, I'm not sure the Vikings are very, very are good at all.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my NFL roundup assessment.
Yeah, I was trying to see here real quick if I could find the Texans score. I was pretty sure they lost. They lost by 2 to the Falcons, another not very good team.
But CJ Stroud threw for 250 yards, touchdown, no interceptions. That's what you like to see.
Yeah, he has yet to throw a pick through 5 games as
That's
a rookie.
Great.
That's actually, he set the record for most pass attempts as a rookie without an interception. So, yeah, I think he's doing well. Let's see. Let's move on to college football.
Okay.
Busy weekend in college football. We'll start with Ohio State. They struggled early, played arguably about as poorly as you could imagine them playing in the first half against Maryland. Went into halftime tied at 10, and quite frankly, that was a small miracle that they were tied at 10. And then Maryland got the ball to start the second half and marched right down the field and scored a touchdown. So they were down 17-10 with about 11 minutes left in the third quarter. And then Ohio State proceeded to score 27 unanswered points to put the game away.
So I watched that game. At least I watched the first 3 quarters.
Okay.
At Buffalo Wild Wings with my wife's extended family,
which are Ohio State fans,
most are Ohio State grads.
Yeah,
and most live in the Columbus area.
And my guess is they were not too happy with Ohio State's performance.
Not in the first half. No, they were not pleased at all.
Yeah. I've taken, now I will say Maryland was undefeated and they really should have been ranked. They should have been ranked like 23rd, 24th, something like that.
Yeah.
So, but bottom line is I have taken a bit of a turn on this Ohio State team. I am now pessimistic about their odds of making the college football playoff. Their offensive line is just not good enough right now. And 5 weeks in, they should be much better. And if they don't change some of the things that they're doing, they'll lose to Penn State and they'll lose to the team up north.
Was there now, as I watched that first half, as somebody who doesn't watch a lot of Ohio State football, I kind of looked at it and I went, this is a bye-week hangover. This is them sort of knocking off the rust. And I think you're right. They were lucky to get out of that first half tied. But I thought once they knocked the rust off, they would return to form and dominate.
Yeah, but they still didn't really run the ball effectively against a team that was not good against the run.
They did not have their top rusher, though, right? He was out with an injury.
Yes, but that would not have made any significant difference. A running back can only run where there's holes and gaps, and they just weren't there. So yes, I've taken a bit of a turn on this Ohio State team. I am now pessimistic that they will make the college football playoff. But things could still change, I suppose.
Okay.
Elsewhere, Notre Dame lost to Louisville. That was
a shock. Yeah.
A little bit. USC survived against Arizona in 3 overtimes. Their defense is atrocious. They will not win a national title. They may not make the college football playoff because that defense is so bad, even though they have the returning Heisman winner. And then I don't know if you caught this. I know you don't follow college football very closely. Miami lost to Georgia Tech. Did you see how they lost to Georgia Tech? Did you happen to catch this?
I believe I did. Should they have taken a knee and they didn't? And there was a fumble?
They were up, I can't remember. They were up 4, I think. Or they were up, had the ball. Georgia Tech didn't have any timeouts left. And they could have taken 2 knees and ended the game. Instead, with about 38 seconds left, they hand the ball off, where literally if they had taken the knee, the clock runs out. They hand the ball off. Miami fumbles. Georgia Tech recovers. And then inexplicably, on basically the last play of the game, Miami allows a wide receiver to get like 10 yards behind their deepest defender. And Georgia Tech throws a touchdown pass to win the game. And what's crazy is it later emerged that footage from the sideline of one of the assistant coaches yelling to the head coach, knee, we can just take a knee. And the head coach completely ignores him. It wasn't like, oh, he couldn't have hurt. No, he just ignores him.
Yeah, that's not good.
No. And what's crazy is apparently, so this coach who's at Miami used to be at Oregon. The same thing happened at Oregon when he was the coach. He had a similar thing. Like once is like, are you kidding me? Twice is like utter incompetence.
Take the W and go home.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. That's just.
Those are the moments where I go, that coach has money on the game and is trying to get his kicker in place to beat the spread or get to some point total or something like that.
Yeah.
Because why run the ball in that situation other than you got a bookie coming after you if you don't score a field goal there.
Yeah, who knows? It's crazy. And this upcoming weekend will be a good weekend of college football. Several top 25 matchups, not including Ohio State. They play at Purdue, which is a trap game. They've lost at Purdue several times, and my son John is going to the game, and I warned him. I said, if they lose, it's your fault. Because our son Jake was at the Purdue game the last time Ohio State lost at Purdue. And the time before that, Kate and I were at the game when Ohio State lost at Purdue. So John's attending the game. Doesn't bode well. It's on him if we lose, yes. It's on him.
Potentially. Also, Colorado beat Arizona.
Arizona State,
excuse me.
Yes. And perhaps not the best look for Colorado after they won that game. Is it Shakur Sanders? Is that how you say his name? I think the quarterback for Colorado.
I'm not sure.
Son. Yeah. Went over and taunted the Arizona State student section after the game. I mean, Arizona State's 1-5, folks. Like, act like you've been there a little bit. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, we should probably hit briefly on Major League Baseball playoffs.
Yeah.
I have not followed them at all, so you're going to have to update me here.
So basically, the wild card round is over. They play a best of 3, and Arizona, Philadelphia, Texas, and Minnesota all advanced out of those, sweeping their opponents. So No 3-game series in that. And now we're in the middle of the ALDS and the NLDS, so the Divisional League Series. And the series between Minnesota and Houston is tied 1 apiece. Between the Texas Rangers and the Baltimore Orioles, Texas is up 2-0, which is a little bit of a surprise. The Baltimore Orioles are a 1 seed. Between Atlanta and Philly is tied 1-1, which is a divisional rivalry. And then Arizona against the Dodgers. Arizona leads 2-0 against the Dodgers, which they're a surprise team. They're a good story. I think the 2 best stories out there are Baltimore and Arizona. Coming kind of out of nowhere.
Though, let's be honest, if you're going to ask the major league executives who they want in the World Series, they don't want either of those teams in the World Series.
I mean, Baltimore, you get the DC crowd a little bit, so maybe you get some East Coast folks, but you're right. No one wants to see Arizona in there.
Yeah, they're just not going to pull big numbers in terms of TV ratings.
Yeah, they'd be okay with Houston.
Yeah.
Certainly Los Angeles, certainly Philadelphia, certainly Atlanta. I don't know how they feel about the Texas Rangers. They haven't been very good for very long.
I don't know.
They haven't made the playoffs in years. Houston, I think, gets pretty good ratings, but probably not the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, probably not.
Which makes me want to root for them, which I mean, a little contrarian sense to them. So
yes, indeed.
But I'm probably pulling for the Orioles and the Diamondbacks out of this list. Certainly not the Phillies or the Braves.
Yeah, obviously. Obviously.
But anyway.
All right, John, we should move on to our topic for the day.
Okay.
We are continuing our series in 2 Peter and the different character qualities that Peter exhorts believers to grow in. And so why don't you go ahead and read for us 2 Peter 1, and let's go ahead and read verses 5 through 8. Let's do that.
Okay. For this very reason, make every effort to supplement your faith with virtue, and virtue with knowledge, and knowledge with self-control, and self-control with steadfastness, and steadfastness with godliness, and godliness with brotherly affection, and brotherly affection with love. For if these qualities are yours and are increasing, they keep you from being ineffective or unfruitful in the knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Okay. All right. So we're talking about steadfastness or endurance. That's another way that you could translate that. So what comes to your mind when you think of that particular character quality?
I mean, when I think of the word steadfastness, just broadly speaking, just sort of this endurance or perseverance through difficult times or circumstances over a long period of time. So sort of continuing despite obstacles is usually what I think of.
Yeah.
How did I do? Is that the notes?
Sure. The capacity to hold out or bear up in the face of difficulty. I think you pretty much nailed it there.
Yeah.
I'll give you full marks on that one.
I appreciate it. How do you see this relating to, because I think seeing this virtue, it's impossible to see the virtue of steadfastness without its relation to self-control. How do you see the two of those interacting?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're certainly related. I mean, I think it's going to be difficult to endure in the face of hardship if there's no self-control, right? I mean, ultimately, uh, enduring in the face of hardship, with a lack of self-control, you're probably going to end up either giving up, if the circumstances in one sense allow that. Sometimes they don't, or you can easily become bitter and angry towards God. It is certainly understandable that when we are faced with difficult circumstances, that we are tempted to be bitter or angry towards God, especially if you have a robust doctrine of God's sovereignty, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you firmly believe in God's sovereignty and believe in his omnipotence, that he's capable of removing you from that hardship, then the fact that he doesn't raises questions in your heart and mind. And so if you don't have a measure of self-control, I think you end up far more easily giving into either bitterness or anger towards God.
No, that's a good word. I also think this idea of steadfastness, this sort of endurance through difficulty, through struggle, through strife, really pushes back on some of those prosperity gospel notions, right?
Sure.
That if you develop your faith, if you sort of believe the right things and believe it strongly enough, you're going to get everything you want. Life is going to be easier. Your cancer is going to go away. All your legs will be the same length. I think embedded in the word steadfastness is sort of this idea that just like, hey, yeah, Christian life is great. It's hard. There's going to be obstacles. There's going to be struggles. There's going to be frustrations that come out as you continually grow and grow and grow.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think, there's a sense in which the reason that steadfastness is necessary or endurance is necessary is because of the not yet of the Christian life.
Yeah.
That what God has promised us, there's still a lot of not yet to come. And so as a result of that, there's a need for being steadfast in the midst of waiting for that to happen, waiting for the fulfillment of God's promises, and realizing that in many, really, you might even say in a sense, unless Christ returns, you don't get to see the fullness of God's promises realized in this life. So I think that's a big piece of it, and that's also honestly why when you look biblically, this term shows up a lot in the book of Revelation. The idea of being steadfast or enduring to the end. There's a lot of statements in Revelation that uses the same Greek word that have the sense of the one who endures to the end, will receive this blessing and that sort of thing. So it makes sense that it shows up a lot in a book like that.
And I also believe it's the same Greek word used in Romans 5, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, where's the actual verse?
Verses 3 and 4.
3 and 4. Rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that our sufferings produce endurance. And Paul goes in Romans goes as far as to say that endurance produces character. Through these difficulties, there is something sharpening and changing of us in there.
Yeah. And then even later there in Romans 15, Paul says that one of the reasons God gave us scripture is to produce steadfastness or endurance. That's Romans 15, 4 and 5, as we learn from those who've gone before us. So it is striking that even as you think about how do we grow in this area, it's refreshing in one sense that God says, I gave you scripture for this very reason. Like, so you can grow in this area, I've given you scripture so that you can not just read it in some sort of, quickie soundbite kind of way, but to reflect on it, to think about it as a means of building that endurance that we need.
Yeah, no, that's a good word.
I think here's an issue I'd like to raise, which I think we this could get us in a little bit of trouble. Not like getting us fired trouble, because of course that's the number one rule of the podcast is don't get fired. But when you think about uh, one of the terms our culture uses that's not as common as, well, that's more common really than endurance probably, is you see more and more people raising the issue of, especially among students, among this current young generation, is they lack grit.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, those concepts are relatively similar.
Yeah.
Grit and endurance, I think, have a lot of overlap. They're not exactly the same, but there's a lot of overlap between those two.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think you and I both have seen this in this current generation of high school and college students, that this is not true across the board. There are plenty of students that fall into this category who demonstrate grit and determination and endurance in the face of hardship. There are students like that. But and here's where I think we have to tread carefully, is I think now that with so much focus on students' mental health and how broadly that term is used, I mean, it is used so broadly now, that some of the ways we talk about mental health actually undermine the pursuit of endurance or grit or determination. Do you think that's true?
In some ways, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I will say, like, uh, so the researcher who sort of popularized the term grit is Angela Duckworth. I don't know, familiar with her? She has a book called Grit,
Mm-hmm.
but she's out of the University of Pennsylvania, um, and has a whole center where she studies this. And one of the studies she comes across is grit, broadly defined, grows as you get older. And so, in some sense, it's just like, goodness, we're dealing with people who haven't gone through difficult things in order to develop some of that grit or some of that endurance.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's part of me that goes, and some of that comes back to, I think, Jonathan Haidt's work, right, where he talks about the coddling of the American mind and
Yeah.
the safety culture that we have broadly in our culture. And so we're giving some students their first experiences of difficulty, and they
Sure.
don't have the safety net of mom and dad around, like somebody going through something similar at 12, 13, or 14 that maybe others have. So yeah, I think I think you're right. I think the mental health discussion and labeling everything as traumatic or a mental health issue, or even sort of the utopian-ish belief that we should never experience difficulty at all
Mm-hmm.
in the modern world, sort of pushes, sort of brings on us like a no, you don't need endurance because you're supposed to live in a utopia where everything's great and easy. Or at least that's some subtext. I don't think anybody would say it quite that directly. But
Yeah.
anyway, that's a ton of rambling on that topic, but pick and choose what you'd like.
Well, I just think that, and my wife's a teacher. She teaches high school students. Obviously, you and I interact with college students and seminary students, and um, it just seems like there is a mentality that, um, you know, oh, I had this unpleasant thing happen to me, so that means I should be off the hook for doing my homework assignment or preparing for this test, or and then sometimes you probe a little deeper and you're like, okay, yeah, that's unpleasant, but that should not be your life now stops and you're
Yeah.
off the hook for basic responsibilities of life.
Yeah.
And part of what worries me is that if everything becomes a mental health issue, then those sort of lesser things that God uses to produce endurance, steadfastness, grit, that instead of learning from that and learning there are days where I'm just going to have to kind of buck up and just do what I'm supposed to do, even though my life circumstances are not great.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, you can take that to an extreme. Like, I'm not
Sure.
saying there's never a place for like, oh gosh, this awful thing happened. I think I just need to kind of recover a bit from that and not just sort of blindly press on with everything in my life. But I mean, it seems to me that that used to be reserved for like really big, obvious things.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you had a close relative pass away. Okay, yeah, I can understand you might need a few days to kind of, you know, recover from that. And so sure, yeah, let's give you an extension on that assignment. Let's accommodate those sorts of things. But you know,
Yes. My class is making you anxious is not a good reason to miss class.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's
I've gotten that before. I've gotten hey, I saw you standing up there getting ready to lecture and I had an anxiety attack. I need to leave. I'm like, okay, do what you need to do. But I don't think that's going to help the anxiety at the end of the day.
yeah, it's just anyway. And I think part of it is, I think you're right. Part of it is that sort of expectation that, well, our lives should not have any difficulties,
Mm-hmm.
or that life is supposed to be relatively easy and prosperous, as opposed to, well, no, I should expect that bad things are going to happen, and this world is not my home anyway. Like, my ultimate hope is not in the perfect life here;
Mm-hmm.
it's in the new creation. And so, but here's the thing. I think, and this is where I'll throw some parents under the bus and my own generation of parents, because we're the ones who raised this current generation of students.
This is actually a Matt Harmon problem.
Yeah,
Yes.
it is.
Yes.
It is
Yeah.
that some approaches to parenting, i.e., the sort of helicopter parenting,
Yeah.
undermine the no, you're just going to have to endure this one. This is not this is a situation that's not ideal, but instead of running away from it, instead of completely removing yourself from it, you're just going to have to learn to endure it.
Mm-hmm.
Students, you sometimes see this with athletic uh, teams. Johnny goes out for basketball or whatever, and it's not going how Johnny expects. He expected to get more playing time. He's not getting more playing time. Maybe there's somebody on the team, there's some kids on the team that he doesn't click with. So as a parent, do you step in and be like, okay, it's okay that you quit. It's okay that you quit the team.
Yeah.
Or do you say to Johnny, you made a commitment. I know it's not ideal, but you're going to follow through with this commitment, and you're going to keep playing on the team, and you're going to learn to grow from this somehow. So those that's just one example, but those kind of dynamics of there can be a parenting instinct like, oh, that's difficult. I need to help you get out of it immediately and not experience that difficulty, as opposed to, nope, you're just going to have to learn to deal with that one.
Yeah, and I think that gets back to Jonathan Haidt's work on the culture of safetyism.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
And the psychological safetyism particularly.
Yes, but I also will say, I think one thing that pushes against us growing in endurance or steadfastness is we live in an instant gratification culture.
Mm-hmm.
And so even I think there are small things you can do to try to help reinforce delayed gratification as an exercise in endurance in one sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
You see something, I want it right now. Well, do you really need it right now? Is it the best financial decision for you to have that right now? Or even just, would that be good for you to have right now as opposed to maybe later? Like, I just think sometimes we get so caught up in our our instant gratification culture that it undermines the development of endurance or steadfastness.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I mean, goodness, I think about the early church and the progress of the gospel in the first couple centuries, and it required a steadfastness to it, right? It required sort of this, we're going to evangelize generation by generation by generation, until it's, swallowed the Roman world whole, pretty much. And that required a good bit of perseverance, commitment to long-term goals, and it came to fruition.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good word. All right, John, you ready to move on?
Sure.
Time now for This Day in Sports History.
I almost jumped into it right before.
I know.
So must be out of practice here. Okay, This Day in Sports History, October 10th. October 10, here we are, October 10. 1920, the Cleveland Indians outfielder Elmer Smith, I can pronounce that one, hits baseball's first ever World Series Grand Slam. Teammate Bill Wamgnas makes the first unassisted World Series triple play in Game 5.
So in the same game.
Same game. Wow.
I think Wamsgans is how I'd go with that one, maybe.
I feel like I think I was pretty close to what you just said there. 1976, Greece's 98-year-old Dimitrion Yordanidis. How was that?
Yordanidis
is the oldest man to compete in a marathon. He finished in 7 hours and 33 minutes.
By the way, have you seen, this is really off our radar, but there's a guy, a young, he's like 22 or 23. He's on the verge of breaking the 2-hour barrier for a marathon. Did you see this? He's like 35 seconds away from it. And all the buzz is he's going to make it.
Yeah, I mean, runners, I think at their peak at like 27. Is that
sure.
That right?
I don't know. Maybe.
So he's not quite there yet. 1987, Hartford center Doug Jarvis ends his career having played an NHL record 964 consecutive games as the Whalers lose 6-2 to the New York Rangers. Have you seen the Hartford Whalers logo from back in the day?
I haven't. Is it a whale?
It's a whale's tail. It is a thing of beauty. If you've never Googled Hartford Whalers, you absolutely should.
I'm guessing that in our audience, there is not a single person who has Googled Hartford Whalers. I'm just going to go out on a limb.
I think it's a pretty popular historical logo. Like, people like it. Anyway, 1993, Cleveland Browns Najee Mustafa sets club record for longest interception return, 97 yards.
There you go. Yeah.
1993. That's pre-move to Baltimore. Yes.
Yes. That's the original Cleveland Browns franchise. Yes.
And 2020 French Open women's tennis, 19-year-old Swiatek of Poland wins her country's.
You missed her first name.
Oh, I did. Iga Swiatek of Poland wins her country's first singles major title, beats American Sophia Kenin.
Okay. Yeah. Which that's a COVID thing, right? Because the French Open is normally in May. But that year, obviously, with COVID, it was pushed back, and they still held it, but they held it in October. So
I see.
I had never heard of Iga Swiatek. Swiatek. The S has got a weird accent over it, and the A has got a weird accent mark underneath it. So,
yeah, when it comes to some of these Eastern European, spellings, I often think those accents are just growths on the letters themselves.
Okay.
And they need to be removed by a licensed surgeon or something.
Okay. Who do you like out of the list?
I probably like the Cleveland Indians one with Elmer Smith and Bill Wangaras.
Okay. Okay. I
Who do
was
you
leaning
like?
I was leaning towards Dimitrion Yordanidis.
I mean, completing a marathon at 98 is impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Um,
I can go either way. Obviously, I don't think we'll ever repeat either of those. So
let's go the marathon.
okay, we'll go with Dimitrion Yordanidis. It is one thing you like.
All right, so this weekend I was down in North Carolina and I got the distinct honor and privilege of officiating my sister-in-law's wedding. And so,
So this is Kara, yes?
yeah, Kara got married over the
Okay.
weekend to my new what is her husband to me? Is he brother-in-law technically? Like how do
I,
you
I would regard that as a brother-in-law, even
okay.
though I don't know if that's technically the correct uh, term. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I'd go with that.
So his name's Samuel. I know he's dropped in and listened to a couple of episodes from time to time,
Okay.
but I do not think Kara is a listener in any stretch of the imagination. But
Okay.
uh, their service was awesome, a ton of fun to officiate, a very fun wedding to be a part of. It was a good time.
Excellent. Excellent. So for me, I've been waiting to use this. I've just had other things that have taken precedence for our one thing, but I am finishing up the audiobook version of Colin Hansen's biography of Tim Keller. And part of what makes the audio version better is that they included audio of Timmy K and some of his sermons. So they included his sermon the Sunday after 9/11. They included his gospel-centered ministry message from the first Gospel Coalition event. There's also a lecture done by Ed Clowney on basically on preaching Christ from the Old Testament. And then there's I just started this one. It's a message that Elizabeth Elliot gave. So yeah, it's just fascinating because I mean the whole focus of the biography is on. I mean it tells the story of his life, but it focuses a lot on the sort of intellectual theological influences on Keller, and so it's a nice touch to have actual audio from some of these key figures that help shape Tim Keller's approach to life and ministry.
Yeah, no, that's excellent.
And it's on Scribd. So if you have a
Yeah,
Scribd subscription, it is freely available to you.
we should see if we could get a partnership from Scribd to like.
Yeah, with our massive listenership there. I mean,
I'm sure we could get 7, 8 subscribers.
There you go.
Did you see that they're splitting? Did you get that email that
I
Scribd is
did,
becoming
yes.
one thing and they're naming their audiobook and ebook thing another thing?
Yes,
now?
I forget what it's going to be, but
I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, Scribd is just going to be like user uploaded documents. Is that what you understood that?
That's my understanding. I don't know. I don't use that side of it.
I
so
never
I don't
use that either.
know
Yeah.
what that is.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess even though they're splitting, I guess we'll still like your subscription is good for both aspects of it still, I
Yeah,
guess.
I think so. I think so.
I don't know. We'll have to have our people reach out to Scribd and see if we can come up with a sponsorship deal. That's what we need.
Yeah, that'd be great. Where you and I get free access for life. That's the deal I really want.
That's sort of the non-negotiable starting point. Yeah. So
that'd be ideal.
All right, John, we have talked college and NFL football. We have talked steadfastness / endurance. We have talked Dimitrion Yordanidis completing a marathon at age 98.
He sounds like a mashup between like some sort of Autobot and some sort of like Spartan warrior.
Okay.
He kind of has a mashup between those two in his name.
I can go with that. Yeah. We have talked you officiating your sister-in-law's wedding. And we have talked the Colin Hanson biography of Timmy K. So I think by definition, we have covered our various and sundry topics. So all that's left to say is, until next time, the Lord bless y'all real good.
Later.